Former President Donald Trump reacting to the jury finding him guilty on 34 counts in his New York City trial. The Biden-Harris 2024 communications director, meanwhile, Michael Tyler, saying this: in New York, we saw that no one is above the law. There is only one way to keep Donald Trump out of the Oval Office, and that is at the ballot box. Joining me now is Harvard Law professor emeritus. He is author of Get Trump: The Threat to Civil Liberties, Due Process, and Our Constitutional Rule of Law. Spot on, even before all of this happened. There's the book. Alan Dershowitz is here. Alan, thanks very much for joining me this morning. You've seen this trial unfold firsthand. You had a front row seat in that trial. Your reaction to the verdict?
My big disappointment is with the jury. You know, juries are supposed to be a check and balance on the excesses of prosecutors and judges. This jury failed its role of checking and balance these excesses. Of course they did, because they were handpicked by the judge and by the prosecutor to be anti-Trump. These were Get Trump jurors. These were jurors who voted between 85 and 90% not to allow Trump to be president, and they will do anything to prevent him from being president. And so their vote was a second vote on November against him being president. It wasn't a vote on the facts or the law of the case. The facts of the law of the case here are an absolute joke. There isn't a serious lawyer in the country, Democrat or Republican, who will privately tell you this was a legitimate case. I'm getting calls from friends of mine who are Democrats and who are liberals, but who won't speak out, who say, of course this is outrageous, of course this is a political trial, of course there was no basis for convicting him of misdemeanor based on the statute of limitations, but we're thrilled, we're happy, we're cheering for the result, because this is part of the whole Get Trump mentality. And, maybe it'll backfire, maybe it won't, maybe it will be reversed on appeal. My worry is that the appellate judges are just like the jurors. They're afraid of coming back home and being accused of being the ones who allowed Trump to become president. I'm afraid the appellate judges will fall into the same Get Trump trap, and we'll see no challenge on our system of rule of law.
But how much of the influence came from the judge to begin with? I mean, I was talking to someone last week, and she said that she saw all of the jury selection sheets, and, it was all like, I hate Trump, I want him behind bars. I mean, stuff like that. When the jury was selected. And then Judge Merchan comes up and tells them, oh, don't worry, you don't have to be unanimous on a secondary crime. Choose whatever you want, pick a crime, and that's fine. When, in fact, we know it's supposed to be unanimous. I mean, then he sets Trump's sentencing hearing for July 11th, just days before the Republican National Convention. So I want to get your, you say you're disappointed in the jury, but how much of the jury's behavior was because of the judge and what he told them to do?
Absolutely. This was essentially a directed verdict of guilt by the judge, by giving them the multiple choice defense, by saying you don't have to agree on which charges or the secondary crimes. You don't have to prove them beyond a reasonable doubt. You can accept the prosecutor's argument that, as a matter of fact, this was an illegal campaign contribution, while keeping out an expert witness who really knows campaign law, who would have said, no, this is not an illegal campaign contribution. The judge, by allowing the detailed, salacious testimony of Stormy Daniels, utterly irrelevant to the case, and the Court of Appeals of New York has already ruled in the Weinstein case that that's illegal. If they simply apply the Weinstein precedent to the Trump case, they will reverse this conviction. But no matter how unpopular Weinstein may have been, the court had the courage to reverse his conviction. Will they have the courage to allow Donald Trump to be the next president of the United States? That's the real question. Can he get justice in New York? Or is this going to be an invitation to local prosecutors around the country who are Republicans to start weaponizing the criminal justice system and to go after Democrats and start bringing them to trial in front of jurors that are very anti-Democrat? This is the beginning of a war of weaponization of the criminal justice system. And it has, legal systems failed. Our system of checks and balances, which is the great contribution that the American Constitution made, failed yesterday. And we get more bananas. On my show, The Dersh Show, I give out bananas. We're up to 8 bananas out of 10 on a banana republic. Lost our system of checks and balances yesterday. Yeah.
Well, that's good. I know. And I like the fact that you give out bananas because it's spot on. Let me get your take on what we heard from the White House and the Biden campaign earlier this week. Because remember when we were all waiting for a verdict, the campaign comes out and they say, we're going to have President Biden make a statement after the verdict is out. He's going to do it from the White House so it doesn't look political. Yeah, right. And then they say, if he is acquitted, if it's a hung jury, we are planning attacks on President Trump. I mean, when I read that, I was so taken aback. I thought, could this actually be true? Are they admitting that they are intimidating people right now, even before? I mean, how much of that intimidated the jury, do you think?
Well, I think the jury was very much intimidated, even though they were anonymous. I think the judge was intimidated. Nobody wants to be Dershowitz. You know what being Dershowitz means? It means being very popular in places like Martha's Vineyard and Harvard, then defending President Trump on constitutional grounds and being completely canceled so that no one will talk to you, to your family members, to your wife. And every juror understands that. Every judge understands that. If you're perceived as doing anything in favor of Trump in a city like New York, particularly in Manhattan, your life is over. And every juror understood that. Every judge understood that. In fact, one juror got out of the case saying, I can't stand the idea that I'll be discriminated against if I vote for Trump. This case should never have been held in Manhattan. It should have been held in Staten Island or Rockland County. It should have been held after the election, not before the election. Everything is wrong with this case. Everything that American was violated by this process.
Alan, that is so incredibly terrible what you said, and you're right. It should have been held in some place like Staten Island or somewhere where we knew that maybe we could get a shot at some fairness. Will Scharf is the Trump appellate team attorney. He joined Special Report last night. Here's what he said. Watch.
This case is replete with reversible error, going back to the very first day, continuing through jury instructions. Every aspect of this case is ripe for appeal. We are going to appeal as quickly as we can. We will seek expedited review of this case, and we're going to trust that the appellate courts in New York understand the dangerous Pandora's box that this lawless judgment has opened, and that they understand the potential ramifications to our legal system.
So, Alan, one question:
Yeah.
What should the Trump team do now? They've got the 30 days to appeal, and also, what about the Supreme Court? How much is the SCOTUS focused on this as they debate and deliberate over the potential for presidential immunity on the January 6th case?
Sure. Well, first of all, Will Scharf is a very good lawyer. I'm glad he's staying on the team. I was not thrilled with the chief counsel in this case, but Will Scharf is very good, and they need to bring on board some more experienced appellate lawyers who maybe can make the best of the record in this case and bring forward an appeal that has some chance of winning. It's uphill because of the judges in New York. This is uphill. Eventually, this case will get to the Supreme Court, and if they take it, it will almost certainly reverse the conviction, but that might be after the election. And so it will be election interference. There should be an expedited appeal. They should try to get this case up to the New York Court of Appeals as soon as possible, and then to the United States Supreme Court. But you need experienced appellate lawyers, particularly experienced in New York law. For example, the man, Arthur Ardala, who won the Weinstein case, should be brought on board immediately. He understands the law of New York, and he has a winning record in New York. And you always need new eyes after a loss like this. There are some good members of the team, the team of lawyers, but there are some who should be replaced. And I hope Trump will do that and put together a great team, because it's very, very important that this appeal be won, not only for Donald Trump, but for every citizen of the United States. This prosecution be rebuked.
This prosecution what?
Has to be rebuked, has to be reversed.
Okay.
Has to be judges to prosecutors that you can't bring these kinds of cases. Even if you win them in front of the jury, the law is against you. The facts are against you. Justice is against you.
Yeah.
And just because one doesn't mean this is a strong case. The worst thing about this case is that it's such a weak case, and it's still won in New York.
Yeah. What are the restrictions that are on President Trump right now? Is this going to affect his campaign? Can he travel? Can he leave the state, go to the Republican National Convention? What should we understand about the restrictions that a conviction brings?
I don't think there are any restrictions at the moment. Once there's a sentence, there could be, but he'll move to stay the sentence. And if they do move the convention up to July 4th, as your previous guest said, then we'll have a sentence before the convention. So that's an idea which is a mixed blessing. He has to continue with, he no longer has a presumption of innocence, obviously, but he's innocent as a matter of law and as a matter of fact. And the fact that a jury, a completely biased jury selected by a completely biased judge, convicted, shouldn't change attitude toward him.
Yeah.
This case should be ignored. This conviction should be ignored by any reasonable thinking person. Yeah. And any thinking reasonable judge should reverse it on appeal.
Yeah. By the way, you said, you know, he no longer has the presumption of innocence. I don't think he had the presumption of innocence going in. Okay. Even before the jurors sat down in their seats, I don't think there was any presumption of, you know, prove innocent until proven guilty. But I got to get your take on Michael Cohen. What do you think happens with Michael Cohen? Can he be charged for perjury again? He lied and lied and lied. We learned while he was on the stand that he actually stole money from Trump, right? $60,000,
yeah,
$30,000. It was $30,000 when you gross it up with taxes. $60,000 he stole from Trump, and he admitted it on the stand.
He's a hero. He's a hero in New York now. He will be praised. He'll probably get his television show. And he lied. He looked at the public and said, "I have no financial interest in the outcome of this case." He was dancing yesterday, jumping up and down with joy. He has tremendous financial interest in this case.
Can he be charged with perjury again?
And he could be charged with perjury, but he won't be, because this is Get Trump. This is not Get Cohen. And in my book, Get Trump, I predicted exactly this outcome of this case as soon as the decision was made to indict. After everybody had said there was no case here, Vance said there was no case, Fed said there was no case. As soon as Bragg indicted, we knew there was going to be a conviction. It was a foregone conclusion. So yesterday's result is not news. It was just the end result of a completely predictable injustice that was engineered from the very beginning by a politician who had campaigned on the promise to get Trump. That's why this is so dangerous to all Americans. Today, it's Get Trump. Tomorrow, it's Get you. Tomorrow, it's Get me. Tomorrow, it's Get your loved one. The American system has been weaponized against political enemies, and that is a great loss for all Americans.
And it's the beginning of losing the country. I mean, what can you say? It's discouraging.
We fight back, and we never give up, and we demand that the Constitution be adhered to. And we legally, and others will fight back politically, but we can't give up. I'm talking as a liberal Democrat now, who was not concerned impact on elections. I'm concerned about the impact on the rule of law. That's what I care about deeply.
Well, yeah, I know you do, and you've been tough. You've had to be tough because you've also efforts to cancel you have been underway as well. Alan, it's great to see you. Great conversation, and we appreciate your time. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.